Good morning. Welcome to Canyon County's 5th Annual Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Proclamation and Press Conference. I just want to start by acknowledging some of the different various entities that we have in the room today. We have all of our commissioners for Canyon County, Brian Taylor, the elected prosecutor, Chief Wyant, Sheriff Donahue. It looks like perhaps Chief Huff isn't here, but I see that Lieutenant Scoglin is present. We have advocates, victim witness coordinators, police officers, and a lot of people who are doing their very best to stand out for child abuse and child sexual abuse. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused as a child. Every day, 5 children die as a result of child abuse in the United States, and nearly 700,000 children are abused every year, just in the United States alone. The highest rate of child physical abuse is inflicted on children under the age of 3. 90% of child abuse is inflicted by someone who knows the child and is someone that the child trusts. Approximately 14% of all men and 36% of all women in prison were abused as a child. There are more than 42 million survivors of sexual abuse in America. People often ask whether or not child abuse is on the rise or whether it's on the decline. The truth is we simply don't know. A large amount of child sexual abuse is never reported. According to CARES, which is the child abuse clinic that is part of St. Luke's Children's Hospital, they used to keep track of the statistic. As of a few years ago, 3 years was the average from the time that a child was sexually abused until a child told. That's the average. There are children who tell right away, but in my experience doing these cases, the vast majority of children don't tell. Or if they do tell, it takes years for them to feel comfortable coming forward. All of these numbers are staggering. Child abuse has lifelong consequences. In fact, among children and teen victims of sexual abuse, there is a 42% increased chance of suicidal thoughts during adolescence. In coming here today, each and every one of you are taking a step to say that we are going to stop child abuse. I'd like to invite Commissioner Pam White up to read our proclamation, which has been signed by the County Commissioners, Mayor Nancolis, and Mayor Kling. Commissioner White.
Good morning. I'm glad that you are all here today. Whereas the month of April is National Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month, and whereas Canyon County recognizes that children are the key to the county's future, success, prosperity, and quality of life, and while children are our most valuable resource, they are also our most vulnerable citizens. And whereas every child deserves to grow up in a healthy, safe, nurturing environment and have an opportunity to thrive, and whereas child abuse and neglect causes psychological, emotional, and physical harm, which can create lifelong problems for victims of abuse. And whereas effective child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of the partnerships created among citizens, human service agencies, schools, faith communities, healthcare providers, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, prosecutors' offices, and the business community, and by recognizing that prevention starts with each of us. And whereas Canyon County, in encouraging citizens throughout the county to display the pinwheels, a happy symbol of childhood, during the month of April as part of the Pinwheels for Prevention campaign to create awareness of the need to prevent child abuse and neglect. Now, therefore, we, the Canyon County Board of Commissioners, the Caldwell City Mayor, and Nampa City Mayor, do hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month, and call upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, elected leaders, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the communities in which we live throughout the year, and especially in the month of April 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner White. This year we're going to do things a little bit different. We're going to highlight a case of child abuse, the Esperanza Espinoza child physical abuse case. Ms. Espinoza is also known as Hopi. Detective Tim Onifree was the first officer to work the case. He's going to share with you some of his perspectives investigating this child torture case. Detective Onifree.
Good morning. There's actually two things that I have yet to become comfortable with. One is testifying and the other is public speaking. So bear with me as we go through this. But imagine for a second your childhood. You wake up in the morning and you're trying to decide if today's going to be a good day or if you have in store for you a bad day. On that good day, you hope that the people that are taking care of you show you love. Give you a hug, tell you they love you, and foster your growth and development. But it's probably more probable that on the other hand, you're going to experience a bad day. And that bad day can be triggered by, I can't find my shoes, I don't know where my swimsuit's at. And the end results are, you can be slapped, kicked, punched, told that you're ugly and stupid, pushed into walls, picked up by your hair and slammed on the ground, strangled, left bleeding. Those are the thoughts that were going through my head when these 6 children came into the Family Justice Center in Nampa and were in the hands of the CARES medical team and were going through a forensic interview. These were the disclosures that were made. Now imagine that this information now is in law enforcement's hands and it has been given to a new detective, brand new detective. 1 month, training wheels just recently removed, and this is his first child abuse case. You nervous? You should be. I was. I was nervous. I was uneasy. I had no historical data, no cases to default to. I had best practice. And that best practice was something that I could lean on with my colleagues, but this didn't fall under best practice. This wasn't your garden variety child abuse case. This wasn't a bruise on the arm. This wasn't a spiral fracture to the arm caused by somebody who in the heat of the moment and in that incident created harm. This is something that was done over 3.5 years and evolved to the level of torture. Remember all those things that were done. These were things done not once in a while, but all the time. These were difficult to hear. They were difficult to deal with. So best practice somewhat went out the window. Emergent became a part of the process. It was my task immediately after the first 2 CARES interviews to have an interview which led to a person being detained and charged. The next week, the next 4 CARES interviews happened. And we continued the investigation. I would like to thank and also tell you that it's never one person that deals with these cases. And if I could walk through just the amount of hands that get put on these children when they come to law enforcement or they come through CARES. You have in our office our colleagues and our supervisors, our victim witness coordinator, which was Logan Johnson, out of the county, Teresa Sanchez. The medical team from St. Luke's, headed by Dr. Cox. The counselors, the advocates, the legal aides, and then to the prosecutors in the end who worked this case, Erica Colleen and Ann Voss. This was a collective effort done to protect these children. I am happy to say that these children are in good hands, in Vanessa's hands, and that I've seen through this process, these kids act like kids, which was far different than what I saw in the forensic interviews. These kids are becoming whole again. They're counselors that they'll continue to work with. And it is my hope that through their counseling and as they grow up, they provide families with love and care. That they show their children what it means to be loved, not beat. I learned a lot through this case. This was my first. This has become the platform of how I investigate every case. Because that little voice in my head that I heard during the first 2 CARES interviews was, these kids deserve your very, very best. I'd like to think I provided that. My goal is, to my colleagues that are out here, which I'm seeing a bunch of familiar faces, to do your very, very best. And you hold me accountable to do my very, very best from this point forward. These kids deserve it. I look at the kids, and I apologize for the dry mouth, but I look at the kids that are here, Renee, and I remember telling him that you inspired me to stand in front of the offender and to take the assault so that your little ones didn't have to. That's heroic. You are a superhero. Angelina, the same. Another shield for the little ones, the target children. But on top of that, at a very young age, she had to take on the maternal role to provide for the mental well-being as well as the physical of these children. You two are a superhero. Anthony's here, but his other 3 brothers aren't, or other 2 sisters and brother are not. My hope is, one, they're very resilient, I'll tell you that much, but my hope is that they grow up healthy. You have taught me far more than I have provided for you guys. I'm happy with where you're at. I hope to remain in touch with you. And again, I challenge everybody to do your very, very best. Thank you.
Tim did an amazing job. Very, very early on, he was picking up the phone. We were having phone calls, conversations about this case. And throughout it all, he just said, I can't fail these kids. These children were initially removed from their home because of unhealthy living circumstances. They were placed in separate foster homes. And to some children, different foster homes may not have the same impact as it did on these 6 kids. Because throughout all of this, the only thing that they had was each other. What was worse is throughout the entire time they were living there, Ms. Espinosa told them, if you ever tell, you're going to go into separate foster homes. And that's exactly what happened when they were removed from their homes. All of that changed the day that their family member, Vanessa Hernandez, stepped up. Despite having her own family, her own children, she opened her home to all 6 of these kids. The children were reunited, and within a week, they were disclosing the physical abuse, the torture that they had endured. Vanessa was amazing. She listened to these kids. She believed these kids. She immediately called to report what was happening. More than anything, she's kept these children together in a safe home full of love and support. Vanessa.
I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of hard going after those 2. My name's Vanessa. About a year ago, I had the opportunity to have 6 beautiful, bright kids come into my house. They were my cousins, so thankfully they knew who I was and knew my family, so it made things easier. After a couple weeks of getting to see and be comfortable with them, I started hearing little stories about, oh, do you remember when, or Hope used to do this, or this one time. And those types of stories were something that you would read out of a book or watch on a movie. So I knew right away I had to tell somebody, I contacted their caseworker right away, told her, we need to get somebody to listen to these kids, because I don't know if what I'm hearing is what really happened. So here comes the carers and abuse. And after they thought they were just in a safe environment and could leave all that stuff behind them, they had to relive it by telling all their stories. And each and every one of them, their stories matched up. At first, it was hard for me to understand why I could let this happen to them. I wasn't in their life. And I know now that by just listening to these kids and being their voice and having a safe place for them to feel at home, that they could be themselves. Then after all that cares and abuse, it was the courts, and these kids are finally able to sit here. I know they're crying, but they're sitting here not having to worry about their past. Now they could just be themselves. Now they're loved and in therapy and just being kids.
Vanessa doesn't give herself enough credit, because this was so hard for these kids. And the two little girls that aren't here today took the brunt of the abuse. As Tim talked about, they were strangled. They were lifted up by their hair and thrown around like rag dolls. They were punched, they were hit, they were stepped on. Anything and everything that you could think, and even the things you couldn't think of, were done to these kids. And all of these children were taken into Vanessa's home. The little girls are very different. The youngest is sassy and a diva, but was still abused. And the oldest of those two is quiet, but she has emotional outbursts. And it fell to Vanessa to be the person to pick up the pieces, to hug her and tell her it was okay. Even as Zayden talked about Hopi taking a knife to her throat, it was Vanessa who comforted her and held her. But it wasn't just Vanessa. Renee and Angelina are two of the most amazing kids I have ever met in my entire life. They were everything to their siblings. Angelina was often referred to during the trial as the mother hen. But that's okay, because that's what she was. She would get their hair done. She would help get them dressed. And she would step in between the fists that were flying. And then there's Renee. I think the story that stuck with me the most about Renee is we were getting ready for a court hearing, and Renee was going to testify, and we were talking about some of the things he was going to talk about. And he talked about one day Zayden had been beaten pretty badly, and he took her into his room, he put her in his bed, and he slept on the floor. And I remember asking, why did you do that? And he said, I just wanted my little sister to feel safe while she slept that night. Because he, like Angelina, would step in between the blows. He would save his little sisters and his little brother, his little brothers. And when Hopi would kick him out of the house for stepping in between, he would walk around wondering what was happening to his siblings at that time. Because his heart is so amazing. When Tim called him a hero, it's true. He and Angelina genuinely are heroes to their little siblings. it is truly my pleasure to invite Renee up to talk.
All right, guys, they set the bar really high. Good morning, I'm Renee Olivares. I'm 15, and I'm a survivor of child abuse. At a young age, I was trying to be an adult, trying to take care of my siblings and make sure they were safe. After everything I've been through, I was scared, and I didn't know what to do at times. I've been through challenges no one should ever go through in a lifetime, but knowing that I had to take care of my family, I couldn't give up, I had to be strong. I wanted to be there and make sure everyone was safe. Hope made my life so hard. I felt like she hated all of us and didn't want anything to do with us. She would do so many things to us that made me want to do terrible things to myself, but my sisters and brothers needed my help. I don't hate her and I forgive her, but yes, she does deserve the punishment she received, but I hope she will change to be the better person that she could be. I hope everyone that is being abused in any way would speak up. It will be fine at the end. You may be scared, but there are people that can help you. Trust me. I want to thank everyone that helped me and helped me get through this.
As we've kind of talked about, this case did go to trial, and these kids got up and they talked about what happened, and in the end, Ms. Espinoza was found guilty of 4 counts of felony injury to child and 4 counts of misdemeanor injury to child. She was sentenced by Judge Nye to a minimum of 6 years, followed by another 16 years, for a total unified sentence of 22 years. There's also a no contact order that prohibits her from having contact with any of the kids for the next 16 years. The stories of these survivors are the reason that many of us that do this job get up every day. And we put on our clothes and we come to work, even though we know it's difficult and even though we know it's hard. Getting to work with kids like this family is the reason we do what we do. I want to take a moment to remind everybody about a ton of events that we have coming up. Wednesday is the Start by Believing proclamation at 10 o'clock here. Friday, there's a rally on the Capitol steps over the lunch hour. April 6th is Walk a Mile in Her Shoes Day. April 7th through the 13th is Victims' Rights Week, which culminates with a candlelight vigil at the Indian Creek Plaza. April 10th is Protecting Our Children in Our Community. It's a free training hosted by the Nampa Family Justice Center at the Nampa Civic Center. And then April 20th is the Superhero Walk. We start at 3 o'clock at the Caldwell Police Department, and we'll walk to Justice Park, which is just across the street. We will end with a safe Easter egg hunt, and I say safe because there will be lots of police officers there, and a barbecue. We have a ton of prizes for our kids. We have over 2,000 eggs that we're hiding, and so we are encouraging everyone to come out, wear your superhero costume or wear a superhero shirt, and wear blue. People often ask me how we can make a difference, and my response is always the same. If you see or you believe that a child is being abused, call and report it. The worst that happens is the case is investigated and no abuse is discovered. But if you're right, you could be saving a child like Renee, Angelina, and their siblings. Believe children. If a child discloses, be like Vanessa, and believe them, support them, love them. Every child deserves a safe and happy childhood. Before you see these pinwheels. Before me are these pinwheels. They're a sign of child happiness. They're also the symbol for child abuse awareness and prevention. I would ask all of you to take a pinwheel today. Take a couple pinwheels. Plant one on your way out in front of the administration building. Take the rest back to your work or your home and plant them. When people ask you what they are, tell them. Tell them the purpose of the child abuse prevention pinwheels. Spread the word that children should be seen, heard, and believed. Take a stand to end child abuse in your neighborhood, in your city, and in Canyon County. Thank you all for making a difference in the lives of children. Have a great day.